just like a feather by my wandering heart to be. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for thy courts above.
It's crazy to me that we're on this map 6 months later and our town is still on this national map. But now everyone knows where Newtown is. Communities like ours don't just form themselves, they're formed by strangers coming together for the greater good of their neighborhood. Isn't that right, Elaine?
Yes, it's right, that's right.
See how easy and painful that was? Painless, that was. Oh yeah, that hurt. So that was so easy. So could you please turn to your neighbor and just introduce yourself, ask how their day was, and just get to know them. And now we have a community.
You know, on the 13th, you didn't know where Newtown was, or that we had a flagpole, or a creamery, or even a parade. Obscurity was nice.
To know where we are, you have to know who we are. So let's clear the slate, because let's face it, he's right. Obscurity is nice. They say the world is connected by 6 degrees, but here in Newtown, it's about 1. If you were born here, everyone is family.
The friends I have are the friends I grew up with. I do have a couple of new ones, but most of the people that I grew up with are so close to me, and they say, you know, I don't even talk to anybody I grew up with, but it's like, you know, everybody wants to come back home.
How many of you have been out to Newtown? Okay, not many of y'all, huh? Newtown is pretty spread out. It all comes together at the center with this big flagpole in the middle of town. Now, Main Street, you go straight through town, and all along it you have churches, restaurants, the library, businesses like Dana Holcomb House Bed and Breakfast. Now, on the right of Main Street, we have Ram's Pasture, which is this beautiful historic field. Now, if you turn right past the pasture, you'll hit Sugar Street, and right up there is the creamery.
So here's the deal with the creamery. They rallied around the town to save this farm. It's close, it's just over here, and it's on this side of the mountain. It's a dairy farm, and they make ice cream. And there's a shack there, and it's open from around noon until around 10 o'clock at night, starting around April the 9th until, I guess, the weather just gets too cold. Sometimes this place is just packed because they make this amazing ice cream, but you can smell the manure. I mean, it's a working dairy farm, and you just go, oh yeah, this is Newtown. But I have so many memories just right here of playing with the neighborhood kids and sledding in the wintertime. And the bell, the sound of the bell, it was on the side of the house, and that was how Mom would call us to come home.
It was a bronze bell cast at a foundry that I worked at. And they gave it to me as a gift when I left, you know.
Oh, and you can hear it all over the neighborhood. And the kids would come running, and they knew that was when dinner was to start. But if I rang that bell twice.
If you were to head back to the flagpole and to make a sharp left, you'd find yourself on Churchill Road. Follow Churchill straight up, and you'll find yourself smack dab in the middle of Sandy Hook.
I grew up and went to all the schools here. It's our lifeblood, this town. I've been here a long time. It's been Sandy Hook for the most part, specifically Sandy Hook. We do a lot of things, builders and contractors. We're property managers. We own a lot of commercial property that you see around here.
Well, that's about it. As you can see, our town has our born and breds, but we also have our transplants around from all over. The story pretty much tells itself from here on out.
I've been the rabbi here in town for now 11 years. I came here in 2002. I had been at larger synagogues where I thought it would make it, well, the larger the synagogue, the more success. But I was just a workhorse, cranking out 50 to 60 B'nai Mitzvah ceremonies per year. And that is a huge amount of ceremonies to conduct, to teach, to prepare, to produce. And I was not happy in that situation. But when I had the offer to come to Newtown, I thought that was the perfect job description. Small, so small, this community, and small politics, hopefully.
That I love are, well, first off, I feel like it's a sort of intelligent and eclectic mix around here. There are a lot of people from other areas that moved here. Newtown was written up years before I was pregnant with my son, or even looked at it as one of the best places to raise your kids.
A couple of people that I worked with said, you have to live in Sandy Hook. That's where I lived. It's got the best school. It's got the best school district. There's just no way you wouldn't love it there.
Oh, one of the very first experiences was with our real estate agent. I mean, she bent over backwards for us. She was even showing us homes that weren't even on the market yet. And just the fact that she loved Sandy Hook so much and loved living there, well, that kind of made a statement, you know?
I would say we probably have the same memories as any other town. The Labor Day parade was huge. I marched in the Labor Day parade as a kid going down Main Street. It was great. I mean, everybody was there. It was a memory that was just fantastic.
Well, now Main Street is the site for this very out-of-hand Halloween tradition. I mean, you've really got to know what you're getting in for if you buy a home on Main Street, because you've kind of bought the farm if you live there. There are so many kids that the candy is actually donated to those families to parse out the candy to the thousands of kids that come on that day. I mean, it's frightening, I guarantee you that, but it's not because it's Halloween.
On December the 3rd, or whatever the first Friday is in December, they have the Christmas tree lighting. And all the residents of Newtown put a candle in a bag, paper sack. We line Main Street, miles. We go up the hill, then down the hill, past the pasture, and around the corner. I drove through there and looked at the site, and I thought to myself, my God, what a wonderful sight. It's breathtaking. It just takes your breath away. And when you see something like that, it's forever. You just don't forget it.
To wander, Lord, I feel it. Drawn to thee, the God I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for thy courts above.
The tree lighting in Newtown and Sandy Hook doesn't have to be anything spectacular. It's really just a big tree with a bunch of people crowded around it, but there's a certain energy to it that I have not found anywhere else.
It's just quaint and what you would expect from a small New England town. It's a very special time here. There was a meteor shower on the 13th, and I brought my two boys out, and we could see everything. It was so quiet and dark and peaceful. It was beautiful. We saw shooting stars, and it was great. Then we brought the boys inside to go to bed, and we put them to sleep. And I went back outside, and I made a wish that my boys would always be safe and happy. My cell phone rang at my desk, and I picked it up as I recognized it was a school. They have like an automatic call thing, which is like where you get messages if the school's closing or delayed or something's happened. And so it was our superintendent, and all she said was, all Newtown public schools are in a lockdown due to a shooting. Click. And that was it. We all thought it was the high school. You know, you wouldn't expect that in an elementary school. So I'm sitting there at the hair salon, and my babysitter called me and said, Jen, I heard the shooting was on Dixon Drive. Isn't that where Sandy Hook is?
I hear sirens from a distance, like really far out. And we are near the highway, so with no leaves on the trees, you hear sirens sometimes. So we were walking back right there to our property at the subway there, and there were these 4 teachers, and we intercepted them, and I asked, well, what's going on? And they were in shock and tears, and they said, something very, very bad. Gunshots. Many gunshots.
My little one had an ear infection, and we had a 9:45 doctor's appointment just up the street. And so the doctor came in kind of hurried, and he said, I'm sorry, we're running a little bit late with all this going up at the school. And then, you know, he kind of examined my daughter and moved on, and we moved to the waiting room. And in the meantime, we got another phone call, and I think it just said Sandy Hook School. And we were in the waiting room, and there were other moms in the waiting room, and it really didn't dawn on me what was happening until one of the other moms said, it's in the school. And I just thought, oh dear God. And they kind of said, good luck. And I said, I've got 2 little girls in that school.
I had a 10 o'clock appointment with a bat mitzvah girl and her family. At 10:03, her father, who's a fireman, excused himself, said he'd been called away from our final rehearsal. It'd be in the next day. And he said there's been a shooting at the school. And so he left, and we went on with the rehearsal. About 15 minutes later, he texted me, and he said, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. And then the phone rang, and it was Father Weiss, Robert Weiss's secretary, and she said,
all clergy go down to the firehouse immediately. All clergy to the firehouse immediately.
By this time, there's nothing we can do. The school wasn't answering, and it's still in lockdown. And I was talking to my husband, and we got a call saying, you can pick up your kids at the school, at the firehouse. So I said to my hairdresser, I gotta go. I've gotta get out of here.
It's as if somebody opened the floodgates right in that moment, and every personnel, police, you name it, first responder in the world was coming. And they came down Churchill, there really is only way to come, and this is it. I saw the police, and it was a problem because this is a really bad intersection. And so I noticed they weren't stopping, so I told my father to keep going, and I went into the road, and I started directing traffic for over an hour. And as I was doing it, I started to realize this is really significant.
So I get to Riverside Road, and there are just cars all over the place. I mean, I pulled over, and there was a man, kind of telling people which way to go, and cars were just parked everywhere. So I unrolled the window, and I said, "What's going on? Where are the kids?"
They're all coming to the firehouse.
Oh, so I got my husband on the phone, and I said, "Come out to the driveway. I'll pick you up, and I'll drive you just as far as I can." So he came out, and I dropped him off, and he ran down, and I just said, "Bring back both of them." And then they started combing through the woods or something, and they dragged some guy out, and he was like,
No, I didn't do anything. No, I didn't do anything.
and everyone thought, "Oh, good, they caught one of the shooters." And so they put him in the car.
No, I didn't do anything.
Turns out it was just a neighbor.
I approached the firehouse, and there was a female FBI agent there. She was talking. She was saying, "I want you to look at your rosters, and for every name of a child that you know was absent, put an X. And for those present, for every name that you saw with your own eyes leave the building with you or anybody else, put a check mark. And for those present, third category, for those present that you did not see leave the building, put a circle."
I was on my way home, and in 10 minutes I knew my kids were okay because my husband was already there.
My husband called a few minutes later and said he found one daughter and he's going to go back and find the other. And then he called me back and he said he got both of them.
I just can't even describe how panicked it started to get for me because he wasn't answering his phone and the texts were flying. "Okay, do you have him? Why aren't you answering me? Where's our son? What's going on?" And I'm leaving all these messages for him and starting to get that rising panic inside because it's like something's not right because he's avoiding me.
Then they said there was no second shooter, and the shooter inside was dead. And they said he was found dead in a classroom. In a classroom. And at that point, I broke down. I went out to the yard and found the nearest stick I could find and just beat a tree because I knew that was the worst case. Shooter killing himself. I knew he didn't just walk in and shoot himself in front of the kids, and I couldn't imagine why. I knew that, with the information, there was more than the three. Him being in the classroom, and the numbers we just watch in horror as it went from a handful to a dozen, 20. And I just thought, we've topped Columbine.
The female blondish FBI agent that was most in charge was in the building, and she started our way. I said, "I'm going to speak to this lady." So I said, "Look, I'm Rabbi Praver. I know what happened. Now what can I do to help?" She said, "Come with me." We went down the corridor to this back room.
When I got there, it was pretty, they'd taken all the fire trucks, and so it was fully empty, all the bays, and there weren't many people. There were a few parents and a few teacher aides were there, and they were holding signs for different classes to line up. And it was almost maybe 10 minutes, and the kids started pouring into the firehouse, and they were all sort of lining up by their number. More and more kids were coming, and I didn't see his teacher. I didn't see any of his classmates. I didn't see him, and I went from one end of the firehouse to another. I saw his teacher. So I started moving over to where she was, and she was talking. She had 4 or 5 kids, in each. They were all holding hands, but none of them were him. And my heart just dropped.
So he finally calls me and says,
"I have him."
and I just went like, okay.
And so this back room was reserved for the families who got the circles on the roster. And I walked around, and it didn't take me more than 15 seconds to find Veronica and Lenny Posner. Veronica was sitting there crying, and I went over to her, and she said, "Rabbi, I just can't go on if Noah is dead. I just can't. No, it's too much."
The governor was there. Pat was there, and we had accounted for the children. We had to account for all the children. All 600 children were. And so everybody was involved in the decision, and the governor just kind of took it upon himself, and he said, I can't. They were involved in the decision, which was, well, we were waiting, the cops were there, and the EMTs were running in and out, and the coroners were there. So the governor said, I have to make this decision. And so he went into the back room and told them that their children weren't coming out.
People were falling on the floor, crying, tearing their hair out. And it spread. It just spread all over the room. When the announcement came, there was a rapid fire clergy. And this was something that was very powerful for me. This was real. This was real religion. One man gets up and says his prayer, and when he's done, another man stands up, says his prayer. And these were the last rites, the final utterings of the Spirit. And all our various houses of worship were there to delivering it up together.
What just happened here?
Jessica, age 6.
Olivia, age 6.
Jesse, age 6.
Grace Audrey, age 7.
Noah, age
age 6.
Victoria, age 27.
Lauren, age 30.
Dawn, age 47.
Mary, age 56.
Rachel, age 29.
Anne Marie, age 52.
Dylan, age 6.
Madeline, age 6.
Chase, age 7.
Jack, age 6.
Benjamin, age 6.
Nancy Lanza, age 52. Mother of the shooter.
Each one of those drop in a pond, and it just emanates out. The ripples, the vibrations, it's life. This stuff spreads.
I just got swarmed. I mean, I was literally swarmed and I couldn't get out. There was so much confusion, so much rumors and gossip, and I was not the great clarifier as I should have been. I just know what I went through in that room. We had 8 of the funerals. I think this story needs to be out there. It needs to continue to be out there. But I've never seen anything like this in my life. And there were literally hundreds and hundreds there in just the first few hours.
Invasive, it was like a rape. There was no escaping, there was no time for us to breathe. We would all be watching everybody, and when somebody went down, I mean at the grocery store, if they would go down to their knees, there was just a hive of people that would come around to protect them so that the media wouldn't see them sobbing, because man, that's what they want. They want to see you sobbing, and they want to see you in pain. We had to actually put up signs at the town hall that said, "No press." So the next day, we printed out a list and listed the names, and we brought the kids into the TV room, and we said, we found out who was hurt and who died and who didn't make it. Some teachers didn't make it. And we told them first, we said that Dawn Hawksprung, Ms. Hawksprung, she's gone, she didn't make it. And they immediately started crying because my oldest just loved her so much. And she didn't want to hear about it. And my youngest just put her hands up to her ears and said, "I don't want to hear any more of this."
I went to a counseling center and I said to them, "How am I supposed to tell my son this? Please tell me how." And I asked them, "Guys, can I workshop this with you just a little?" And they said they couldn't. And I was basically in shock. So I asked, "Well, can we just write this down, please? Because I don't know what you just said to me." So my husband and I wrote it down, and we sat our son down, the next day, and we told him that his best friend was gone.
There were wall-to-wall satellite trucks there almost immediately. I mean, you couldn't see the buildings for all of the satellite trucks. And it's just like you're thinking, the press, the media never comes to Newtown. But it was almost as if, well, my first reaction was kind of weird, I guess, in a certain way, but it was kind of comforting, because it was as if, you know, like the world was recognizing that this was the most horrendous thing that happened on the face of the earth, in my opinion, and they just had to be there to testify to it, you know?
I thought maybe there was some way that I could absorb some of this sadness by just standing in a vigil, sort of like a silent vigil. I woke up and I thought, if this is how everyone's going to remember my town, I just couldn't stand it. I'd had this dream, and I thought, I have to go make a sign. I have to go make a sign and just go stand out somewhere. So I called my friend Vicki and I said, I'm going to make a sign. It's going to say, I am love. I am Newtown. I'm going to go out and stand on the highway, sit on the highway somewhere, exit 10. That's going to be the first place they see when they come into town, and it's going to be the last thing they see when they leave. And I did this. I did this because we are this. So me and my daughter made this sign.
Well, everybody was up in arms, and I said, listen, this is the center of the world. Think about it. Sandy Hook is the center of the world, the universe. It's here.
I sat there for like hours, and everybody was coming up to me. All the media, and they were asking me questions, and I said, please don't ask me anything. You know, I'm in a silent vigil. I'm just holding this space. This is my message, and no, you cannot have my name. So I sat there, and I did this. This is who we are.
There are only so many places to go in Sandy Hook, and that's what I told everybody. Where do you want them to park? Explain it to me. Can't go to the schools, can't go to the firehouse, can't go to the park. The park is jammed. I don't know if you've ever been to the park, but you can't park there. You have to be rational about it. People here are sick too. I had reporters crying. They said, I've never cried before. They'd been to wars. When I saw them crying, I knew we're all in this together. The whole country is in this together. What are you going to do?
The next week was just funerals and wakes, and it was pretty indescribable.
I stood in line for the principal's funeral and had to miss class. Here I am thinking, it's a town away, I'm going to go pay my respects. I had a card I had prepared to leave for the family, a note I had written. And I got there a bit late. There were these cameras that couldn't get too close, police all around the perimeter, and a line that went out the door, around the building, and around the block. And we're talking like rural blocks, so it was easily a mile-long line. So I just went to the back of the line, hands in my pockets, freezing, and I wouldn't leave. I'm just standing there, looking at that flag. They had dropped a gigantic American flag off the boom arm of a fire truck. It was really iconic looking. It was the first thing people would see when they would go inside to pay their respects. It was such a strong gathering moment because everybody was there because she represented what was so great about that school. I don't know, man. That was tough. That was really tough. And I was in and out in less than 5 minutes after standing there for over 4 hours. But I shook her husband's hand, and there was lots of sadness to it, you know? There's no other way to put it. It's just a lot of sadness to it.
We gather here in memory of 20 beautiful children and 6 remarkable adults. They lost their lives in a school that could have been any school, in a quiet town full of good and decent people that could be any town in America. Here in Newtown, I come to offer the love and prayers of a nation. I am very mindful that mere words cannot match the depths of your sorrow, nor can they heal your wounded hearts. I can only hope it helps for you to know that you're not alone in your grief, that our world too has been torn apart, that all across this land of ours we have wept with you. We've pulled our children tight. And you must know that whatever measure of comfort we can provide, we will provide. Whatever portion of sadness that we can share with you to ease this heavy load, we will gladly bear it. Newtown, you are not alone. And we know we can't do this by ourselves. It comes as a shock at a certain point where you realize no matter how much you love these kids, you can't do it by yourself. That this job of keeping our children safe and teaching them well is something we can only do together with the help of friends and neighbors, the help of a community, and the help of a nation. And in that way, we come to realize that we bear a responsibility for every child because we're counting on everybody else to help look after ours. That we're all parents, that they're all our children. This is our first task, caring for our children. It's our first job. If we don't get that right, we don't get anything right. That's how, as a society, we will be judged. We can't tolerate this anymore. These tragedies must end. And to end them, we must change. We will be told that the causes of such violence are complex, and that is true. No single law, no set of laws can eliminate evil from the world or prevent every senseless act of violence in our society. But that can't be an excuse for inaction. Surely we can do better than this. If there's even one step we can take to save another child, or another parent, or another town from the grief that's visited Tucson and Aurora and Oak Creek and Newtown, and communities from Columbine to Blacksburg before that, then surely we have an obligation to try. You know, all the world's religions, so many of them represented here today, start with a simple question. Why are we here? What gives our life meaning? What gives our acts purpose? We know our time on this earth is fleeting. We know that we will each have our share of pleasure and pain, that even after we chase after some earthly goal, whether it's wealth or power or fame or just simple comfort, we will in some fashion fall short of what we had hoped. We know that no matter how good our intentions, we'll all stumble sometimes in some way. We'll make mistakes, we'll experience hardships, and even when we're trying to do the right thing, we know that much of our time will be spent groping through the darkness, so often unable to discern God's heavenly plans. There's only one thing we can be sure of, and that is the love that we have for our children, for our families, for each other. The warmth of a small child's embrace. That is true. The memories we have of them, the joy that they bring, the wonder we see through their eyes, that fierce and boundless love we feel for them, a love that takes us out of ourselves and binds us to something larger. We know that's what matters. We know we're always doing right when we're taking care of them, when we're teaching them well, when we're showing acts of kindness. We don't go wrong when we do that. May God bless and keep those we've lost in his heavenly place. May he grace those we still have with his holy comfort. And may he bless and watch over this community and the United States of America.
I really have been put in a position that I never expected I would be in. I'm like the Catholic leader of the community, and I don't see myself in that role. I saw myself as pastor at St. Rose, but the way I understand it, that was what priests do. But I can never decide if I have attained this leadership by being assigned or having achieved that role. This is, to be honest, I have kept my distance from the families. We have staff that are doing everything possible to support and to encourage them. But I just can't talk to them. I've got to hold myself apart from them right now. This is not an act of God. It is an act of man. When you have free will, anything can happen. Adolf Hitler can happen. senseless shootings and robberies and holdups and carjackings can happen and do happen every day in this country.
The thing was, people kept telling me, well, God gives you free will. This wasn't him. It wasn't God's will. It was him. It wasn't God's doing. It was the guy's free will. He chose to do this. I guess my questions are, well, if he had a mental illness, did he really know what he was doing? And that's not really free will, right? I mean, he can't help it. Then my daughter asks me, out of the blue, is he in hell? And we tried to explain, well, you know, he was probably sick and he didn't realize what he was doing, and he didn't, he didn't know what he was doing. So she asks, well, if he was sick, then that means he didn't know what he was doing and he wasn't an evil person, so God would forgive him, right? What if he's sorry? Does he still have to go to hell? These are questions that, as adults, we don't have the answers for. What is a parent to do?
In the shooter's home, the police found the following.
A 7-foot pole with a blade on one side and a spear on the other.
A metal bayonet.
3 samurai swords.
A .223 caliber bolt action rifle.
A .22 caliber Mark Savage 2 rifle.
A .22 caliber volcanic starter pistol.
2008 articles at the shooting at North Illinois University.
And inside his gun safe was a holiday card from his mother containing a check for the purchase of his next firearm.
Well, you know, of course, I'm angry. I'm angry at his mother especially, and his father and his brother, because obviously there was a lot more to this in the terms of his upbringing and all that. Just the lack of care that he probably received as a child. And I also blame her friends, because did anybody not notice this woman wasn't all together? And what about her ex-husband? Didn't he ever come to the house and see all these guns?
What did he teach us in that evil act? That we're not safe? That's what he was trying to teach. That's what he was trying to do. And we know that's not the lesson to take from it, you know? We all can't help but feel a little less safe.
Not that I'm blaming, not that I'm pointing fingers to any one individual, because, I mean, the village raises the child. I think one of the biggest problems was his isolation. Humans are not meant to be in isolation. And once they become disconnected, bad things can start to happen.
I did know him, honestly, and a lot of his family. He was a good kid. But unfortunately, even though this is a huggy town, kids between the 6th and 8th grade, they start to form a clique.
He was weird, but look, there was a lot of weird people. We can't report them for being weird. I mean, then what would you do? Arrest someone for looking funny? Then it's not America anymore.
He kind of got pushed to the side, and I think his mom did what she had to do. His mother, father, and him were in counseling before the divorce. But then he got disturbed because it was decided that Dad would move and brother would move, and pretty soon he didn't have anyone to talk to, and it just snapped the camel's back. When he was on medication and in therapy, he was the kind of kid that would take his shirt off his back for you. He was the kind of kid that would tutor the younger. He was the kind of kid that would scold the younger if he found him smoking pot. So they just forgot these good things about him.
I always keep 28 candles out. I believe in forgiveness, and this is a very, very big issue.
Talking to a family that has someone with very serious mental illness. My brother is a schizophrenic. And it was what, a good 5? 10 years.
10 years.
10 years that were gray, gray as could be. There was no black, there was no white. What's my brother gonna do? I have no idea. What is he gonna do?
The thing is, and it may not be appropriate, but there were 28 people who lost their lives that day, not 26, 28. 28 families that mourned.
I think his mother did everything she possibly could. There comes a point when you're scared, you're afraid, but it's your son. There's hope because he's not a monster. He's mentally ill. He doesn't think like the rest of us. It's sort of like what you said, Dad. Some people just don't know the difference between right and wrong.
A very good friend of mine put it perfectly. He said there's no difference between a man who is being chased by someone with a machine gun and a man that thinks he's being chased by someone with a machine gun. You know, we grow up, we listen to our parents, and it sticks with us, and we pass it on to our children. And then there's this little hiccup, and it all goes away. And you sit there and you think and say, who stole my son? And the sad part, the real sad part is that he was 18, and legally there's not a thing we could do. We're no different from Mrs. Lanza. We let him go ahead and function. There was just nothing we could do.
Adam was a gifted child that we all failed. I can't help but believe that this could have been averted if there had been someone there, a big brother or someone highly trained, who could sit him down eyeball to eyeball and say, look, Adam, you are different. And kids who don't understand will call you strange, but it's only because of that difference. I want to introduce you to some people who are just like you, who have Asperger's, and they are researchers, actuaries, and other things that involve intense mathematics. You could be on the leading edge of medical research with your skills. And very, very few people in the world can do that, but you can. Grown-ups even will call you strange, but it's only because of that gift. They may even bully you, but welcome to the club. We all get bullied from time to time. I want to help you through this life, through this world. I will meet with you every week. Sometimes we'll play. We'll maybe shoot some hoops. Sometimes we'll just sit and talk. But we are mammals, and mammals herd together. We must stay together to help each other.
One of the things that struck me during all of this time was the fact that Adam's body wasn't being claimed. That was a week's worth of staying up all night.
The only thing any monster does is that he succeeds in becoming infamous. And he will become a mark in the history book in some cases if we let him. What do you do to bury people like this? To forget them, because that's what you need to do. You need to forget them.
I think we're all trying to find our place now. We all knew who we were before December 14th. And now we ask ourselves, who am I? What am I supposed to do? How can I help? What can I do? And then it just feels like you're adding to the noise.
Well, for many, many moms, I think we've kind of become accidental activists. I mean, I remember after that first meeting with the psychologist, I told her, I am just so angry at all of this. I'm so angry about what happened and about all the gun stuff. And she said, well, you really can't focus on what's already happened, but you can focus on the gun stuff if that's what's really upsetting you. And that was really kind of a good idea. So I just started writing to my legislatures, the lawmakers, anybody, you know, on a website that I had a good email. I would just like free type, and I was just going after it. I was just so mad and upset at the gun stuff because I never really knew about it before. I mean, I wasn't really pro-gun, but I wasn't really anti-gun. And now it's like your eyes have been opened to this and you just can't close them.
Newtown does not want to be remembered as a town of tragedy. We want to be remembered as a bridge to a new and kinder world. It's not about the suburbs, and it's not about the urban areas, and it's not about the rural areas. It's about the red blood that flows from all our veins. It's about the clear tears that flow from all our eyes. We are all the same.
There were these people demonstrating outside the NSSF building, which, in case you didn't know, is National Shooting. It's a very positive organization. It's a resource for people who hunt. It lets them know where to hunt and what the rules are. Or it's recreational shooting. It's a very, very positive organization, and it's been here for decades. So yeah, people are outside it demonstrating and saying, get out of Newtown, get out. And I went in the grocery store after passing by them, and I just started bawling, and I could not stop. I was telling myself, you're in a grocery store, stop crying. Oh, I had to check out with all my crap like that, crying through the whole process, and it was like, oh man, that sucked, you know?
We live in a society of 32,000 deaths by gunfire each year. If this happened in Afghanistan, we wouldn't stand for it. But when it happens here in America, in our own cities, we somehow become mysteriously silent.
And now I'm crying in the car. I couldn't even drive, so I pulled over to the demonstrators and said, you guys, stop the hatefulness. You're spreading the hate.
This isn't hate, this is love.
That's what makes me even more sad, that you think this is love. How does a sign that says, get out of Newtown, represent love?
Well, okay, that's hate.
I was just begging for them to stop perpetuating this hate. There's so much division now, and it's strange, because it's like overnight.
You get so desensitized to it. The violence so prevalent in our lives today. It's really kind of a dark side, or a cultural death, or whatever you want to call it, but it's overwhelming us.
That's not the problem. We have no social skills in America. As a kid, I played outside all the time. My parents gave me a Nintendo with 3 games. Donkey Kong, Mario Brothers, and I think Zelda. It was stupid, it was terrible. And if I asked for more, they just said, that's all you get. And I said, forget about it. And just went and played outside. Nowadays, we just don't have social skills.
And when someone is disconnected, bad things happen. There's going to be trauma.
My son's teacher, Miss Rogue, was fast and furious.
She's my hero.
She had the kids all quiet in the room, and then they heard the noises blowing through the doors and windows, and she just immediately said, bathroom.
and she got them all in the bathroom within the room and closed the door, then moved some sort of bookcase in front of the door of the bathroom.
It was literally seconds because he had to have walked by that room on the way to Vicky Soto's room. So the kids are all just sitting in the bathroom hearing everything for however long it was. And my son was like, "We can get out of here. I don't want to die. I don't want to miss Christmas."
My daughter said that was one of the scariest things was when the policeman came because they knocked on the door and they didn't know if it was the bad guy or the bad guys coming to get them. I mean, Ms. Rogue didn't open the door. She made the policemen slide their badge under the door before she would actually open it. My husband talked to her when they were at the firehouse, and she said, "There's going to be trauma."
There's going to be trauma.
They heard everything. They seemed to be okay for a while, and then my son started to show signs of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, maybe a week later. And we as a family just got together and thought, how do we make it better for him? And we didn't know.
The first grade class and whoever was like in that area right there, they're completely different now because they actually thought they were going to die that day.
It was noises. It was locking all the doors. He had to make sure all the doors were locked. And then he'd walk around the house and he might hear the garage door open and then he'd be afraid that someone was coming in through the garage.
She wouldn't leave my side or my husband's side or an adult's side. She was taking, well, we were giving her melatonin almost every night to help her fall asleep because her teacher said that she would just be there with her head on her desk all day. She had huge bags under her eyes.
I guess with PTSD, you just have that fear of not being safe. So kids, children, end up just being scared. They weren't afraid of monsters before. Now they're afraid of monsters.
So now she's afraid of werewolves. She's scared of werewolves. She's afraid of bombs. She thinks somebody's putting a bomb in our house. We were having our generator worked on one time, and she was just watching the guy saying, "What is he doing here? Is he putting a bomb in our generator? What is he doing? Why is he in our house?"
People here are afraid, you know. It's scary to talk about it because you don't know who's been touched by what. And there are times I want to drive away and never come back. And then there are times I never want to leave. I just think it's all, I think everyone here is afraid, and that's what it is. If I get really mad, I'm not going to crumble into a puddle, which is what I really want and need to do. Because if I let myself go there, I don't think I'll ever recover. I don't know, how could you process all of this?
This is what's happened to us. Because we had so much happen that we weren't allowed a moment to grieve for these babies. But I remember the morning the flags went back up. I was going to the building. I was getting there at some crazy hour, and I'd heard about it. And so I called David, the guy who helps me at the building, and I said, "Get over there, get that flag back up. I want the flag back up, the big flag in the center of town. Raise the flags, get them back up where they're supposed to be." And then we just watched. And David raised the flags back up, and I thought, okay, all right, we're getting our town back. Now all you people can leave.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Chris, and I guess what you're looking for is shortly after the 14th, I was put in charge of the in-town relations, which is what they were called. I was in charge of everything that came in and how to handle it, and then eventually disbursement. So I was put in charge of that show. I had a lot of help, but I was put as the head of it.
Well, I want to tell you one thing. Doing the mail was tough.
I know it was.
The mail was tough. In order to do it successfully, you just had to block and just do it.
I know, but it was so healing for so many people.
Facebook being the wonderful thing that it is, somebody decided to send teddy bears to Newtown. I'd seen it on the news and I didn't think much of it, but by Monday morning, she brought in a couple bags filled with teddy bears, my girlfriend, and she said they were handing them out across the way, and if we could get more, that would be great. So We went to the church, and they had an entire 4th grade classroom filled to my waist with just teddy bears, and you're as big as I am. It was just a full 4th grade classroom filled with thousands of bears. And that was just over that first weekend. So, yeah, that opened my eyes a little bit to what the scale was going to be like.
Isn't it so strange that everywhere I went, my son kept getting free teddy bears? Free. It was like people, the whole world was pouring all of this love on us, you know? Such amazing love just coming in from everywhere. And it was like, then you start to think, that was 20 kids lost all at the same time. It was horrific. It was a massacre. It was a tragedy. Then you think how many kids die in Chicago to some pretty poor moms. And then, and how they grow up with all this violence, and nobody does anything for those parents.
I started putting up signs, and then I take a phone call. It was Dennis from Ace Trailer, and he says, "Oh, you know, I can drop off some trailers. What do you need?" And I said, "Drop off whatever you can, because we're going to start running out of room." And we filled those trailers by Thursday. People were driving in. We had people from Nebraska, Florida, Iowa, Texas. People drove from Texas to drop off teddy bears.
And the hugs. This class from Africa sent silhouettes of themselves giving hugs.
With their face.
Oh, it was this big.
And their arms went out, extended. It was the cutest.
And we hung them on the wall, and anytime someone would get down doing the mail, would just go get a hug.
People needed to do it for themselves. And that's what a lot of it turned out to be. Newtown is not a poor community, you know? We have some pockets of broke, but no real poverty like in other towns. So we really didn't need 63,700 teddy bears.
Everybody's on edge, everybody's watching, everybody's looking, everybody's scared. And it's not just us, it's the world, which is what we've been trying to get across to people who want to send us another 60,000 teddy bears. We don't need another 60,000 teddy bears. We've got them. You know, you need to look at your own children. They're scared. They need counseling. They need teddy bears. Give them to your children in honor of ours.
The other problem was the overwhelming number of volunteers. Way too many, way too many. I mean, we'd have 100 people come in one day, we'd get them all trained. The next day there'd be a different 100 people, so we had to train them, and it was just chaos. But the hard part were the families coming in to pick up their items. I didn't really know most of them at first, but I would try to go up to them and say, "Hi, my name's Kat. If you need anything, I'm here to help." And they'd put out their hand, and I'd go, "No, no, no. I give hugs."
So we wound up sending stuff all over. First, we gave the families options on where they wanted stuff to go. So if families wanted stuff to go to Green Chimneys, we'd send stuff to Green Chimneys. If they wanted their stuff to go to the Lakota Indians, I managed to send an entire tractor trailer full of stuff to the Lakota Indian tribe for free. We sent a lot of stuff down to Hurricane Sandy. I sent stuff to a mission in India where kids don't have much. I had stuff to go to Kenya. I had stuff to go to Haiti. A lot of police stations so they can keep teddy bears in their trunks again. We took care of all the battered women's shelters, hospitals, toy closets, and stuff for all of the children's hospitals. I mean, I have a list of them if you want to see it, of where everything went, but everywhere was somewhere good. I got to do it all, had to do it all for free. We didn't have a budget for any of it, so for free. It was done on the backs of volunteers.
The ripples, the vibrations, this stuff spreads.
Then we had Yoli.
Yoli. I've been hearing about Yoli for 6 months. Well, a good 5 months anyway. And she keeps saying, what kind of name is Yoli?
Well, now I hope I'm telling the right story here, but we were obviously very in it. I mean, we were in the hallways of the town hall, and we decided that we would display everything that came in. So we pulled the tables out, and we put the tablecloths on top of them, put the mail bins on them, and I look over, and there's this little lady, and she's out in the hallway going up and down, and she's going through all the cards, and she's sort of settled in, and I didn't know who she was. She had a camera, and she was taking pictures. Hi, what are you doing?
Oh, I'm just taking some pictures.
What do you mean you're taking pictures? You've been taking pictures of hundreds and thousands of cards?
Oh, I just wanted to sort of get
Well, so the next day I went out, and there she was. The cards are now fanned out. And she's creeping into new territory. And she's making a mess on my table. So I just asked her, what are you doing?
Well, my mission is to have a collection.
So then I went back the next day, and the cards are now spread out on the floor. They're all over the place. Okay, we're going to have a little talk here. What is it that you want to do?
My mission is to have a collection of all of this. So anyone who has lost a child, a brother or a sister, an aunt or an uncle, whatever, they can look at all this stuff and just be like, wow, this really helps. This really, really helps. They can print this stuff out. They can make a book for themselves. There's poems that have been sent in. They just make you feel good. It could be as simple as someone wrote on a great big piece of paper, and it just simply said, no words. Love, Trey, a mother of 2 from Texas. And you're like, oh yeah, that's it.
I think she's nuts for doing this, but she's doing this.
She turned from just being someone who walked in there.
Oh, now she has the keys to the kingdom. She can do whatever she wants.
Do you know the idea of agape? It's about loving people because they deserve it. And I don't love, well, I guess I can say I don't love everyone. You don't have to like everyone. You don't have to live with or be friends with everyone. But you have to build a community where there is something for everyone. And so what we're trying to do here is, with the connection of all of this, is to build a model that we can use as an example of what it is we are supposed to be doing from now on.
My daughter finally went back to class, and they had no help in the classroom whatsoever. I mean, no trauma people, no doctors. Well, they had special helpers, which really didn't help at all. I mean, when a child had an issue in the classroom, it was her responsibility to remove the child from the classroom, read them a book, sort of redirect their focus, and just get them to a happier place and then bring them back in the classroom. But that was all they had, and it really wasn't making any difference or doing anything. And each time I went, I saw my daughter just sitting so isolated. She didn't contribute anything. She would just be doing nothing in tears, and any noise would just cause her to withdraw. So we met with the superintendent, and she said, we're working on a plan. We hope to have it in place. And it took a couple of weeks, but they finally got a woman to come in, and we absolutely love her. I mean, she is wonderful. She's still in the classroom, and the classroom has actually gotten so much better. I mean, they're joking and being silly and all of that.
After all that happened, we went to our synagogue, and the rabbi said, is anybody from here? Does anybody have questions? Does anybody have comments? So I turned towards my son, and I asked him, do you want me to say something? And at first he was like, no. And then he was like, yeah. So I stood up in front of everyone and said, hello, this is my son. He was there. He survived. And everybody was like shocked, you know? that I got up and said something. Then my 6-year-old stands up in front of the whole congregation and says, "Every day there are shadows, but every day there is light too."
That's one thing you see in children. They're so resilient. They're so much more resilient than we are. They're all just happy kids, and that's what they're supposed to be. And that's where their innocence comes from. And I look out and I see my son and his friends who were all affected, and they're just outside, boys playing football, doing what they're supposed to do.
Everything is blooming. It's gorgeous. And the contrast to what it felt like here on December 14th, it's just, it was so different. Things are blossoming. Life came back. It's coming back.
Of questions, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't, because the more people are questioning, the more people are thinking about, where do we go from here? What can we do from here? And as an educator, what can we learn from this? It's cliche, but it's true. What can we learn from this?
There's a journey to go through, You have to go through the darkness to get to the light.
It's like all love is. It just draws things to you. And so I feel like it's my duty, since this is the way I've been ever since I got here. You just have to let go. You have to be joyful and live joyfully, because the alternative is, and it was, misery.
Just because you're a survivor doesn't mean you're 100%. You should go away happy that you're fine. Get over it. Shake it off. But the kid is different. These parents lost something. Even though they still have their kids, they still lost something.
My love for this town is well before all this happened. When we moved in the house that we're in now, the real estate agent took us around, and we must have looked at least 80 houses. And I was being a royal pain in the neck. That last day, my wife and the real estate agent turned the car around, stopped, and says, "Which one?"
Pick it.
Okay, the white one with the fence.
Fine. The white one with the fence. So we're just moving up. We're going to help the families and continue the counseling, try to take care of the cops, the EMTs, the dispatchers, and the high school kids. And, just hope we can heal and get to a point where it doesn't hurt so much. Newtown has to move on. So let's move on.
Let's do this.
Family. Always was, always will be.
Can I say 2? Wait. I want to say 3. Capital S. Strong. Period. Capital R. Resilient. Period. Capital T. Transformative. Period.
Strength.
Passion. There's so much in here. Never seen anything like it before. There's so much. I hope I never see anything like it again.
Together. Together is the only way we're going to be able to get through this. You can't be a one-man band. You can reflect back, but you have to move forward. You have to do it immediately and together.
Perseverance.
Home.
love. It's all about how you ripple out and what these vibrations can be. We are love. We are Newtown. And that message says it all.
To thy heart to sing thy praise, streams of mercy never ceasing, calls for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mountain fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Oh, to grace how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind thy wandering heart to thee. Prone to